This is really about being free to create what you want your life to look like. We each are our own hero. And how do we take the challenges that come our way and see those as the birth process of us becoming heroic? Can you meet that judgment that ultimately will surface with neutrality?
This is the Wall Street Coach Podcast with Kim Ann Curtin.
Welcome back to the Wall Street Coach Podcast. This is Kim Ann Curtin and Lucas Peterson. How are you, Lucas?
I'm doing well, Kim. How are you?
I'm doing good. Today is the podcast extravaganza day. We're doing
Yeah, you have a bunch today.
3 podcasts in one day. It's a lot. So today, Lucas and I were talking before we recorded today about the topic, and one of the tweets that came upon my Twitter handle last week or 2 weeks ago was an interesting conversation about receiving. And I thought this might be a good topic. I luckily had Lucas agree. What do you think?
Yeah. I feel like we touched on this a while back, like around, I think it was like Thanksgiving or the holiday time when we started. But we covered it with a lot of other things, and I'm interested to see where we go with this today.
Yeah.
But
Good.
yeah,
Me too.
the idea of receiving
makes sense. We did it at Thanksgiving because of the time of year.
Yeah. But yeah, tell me what you think about receiving, Kim.
Well, I was just noticing this gentleman on Twitter. I spoke about a couple of books. I think it was The Voice Within. It just blanked out on Mike Martin's book.
The Inner Voice of Trading?
The Inner Voice of Trading. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was that book that I spoke to. And this person said, how much it changed his trading. And then I said, congratulations for, he spoke to applying what he learned in the book to his trading, and that he saw a change in his trading. So I complimented him. Good work at applying what you learned into your trading. And then he said back, oh, no, the thanks goes all to, Mike Martin for writing the book. And in that moment, I thought, I think it's hard for this guy to receive a compliment, because if it's hard for you to receive a compliment, then perhaps it might be hard for you to receive in general. And if it's hard for you to receive in general, wouldn't that be impacting what you receive in trading?
I think you're right. I think it can be. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm sure that to some degree to just trying to be humble and being like, sure. These are not my words. I'm just, but like you said, to be able to take on and learn from that and grow with that is all part of receiving, I believe. So
yeah, well, that's all him. Like, okay, Mike Martin wrote an excellent book, but if you don't do anything with what that excellent book, this gentleman took the discipline, the time, the effort to be uncomfortable, to apply what he learned in that book. So at the end of the day, you can read somebody's amazing book and not do a damn thing about it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard to apply what you learn in a book. It's gonna be hard to listen to, hard to be with advice and live it and practice it. So once that person puts the book out there and you take it and run with it, that's no longer that author. I mean, yes, it's a continuous circle, but it's like you get to take credit for being the disciplined one who applies the philosophy you've learned. So I love gratitude. I'm all about gratitude, but it felt somewhat like a deflection of his own contribution to himself. And that's what I picked up on. And then I just, as I responded back and said, hey, actually now this is you, this is all you. So take a bow because you took those words and did something with them. And I think what I notice among, it's a generalization, certainly not a scientific study, but it seems to me that men really struggle with receiving compliments and receiving acknowledgement, and they will quickly pivot to their mentor, their teacher, their book, this, as if they want to deflect attention from them. And I think it's because at the end of the day, to receive, you know what you have to be to receive?
What?
Vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
think you do.
Vulnerable.
You have to be open and vulnerable, and
men don't like to be vulnerable. That you guys are culturally indoctrinated to definitely not be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So it's tricky. I think it's tricky.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think this like you said, it transfers over to trading. It transfers into basically every other part of your life, right? Like in many ways, I'm sure that you could see this as like how people receive love and how people receive affection, and if they're not willing to be open to that as well, can completely shut that out.
Yeah, for sure. But if you're not open to love or affection, there's a really good reason. Like you didn't get, this isn't something one friend used to say to me, I didn't get it licking it off the wallpaper in my house, Kim. So it's coming from the environment. There is an environment with parents, and the way things roll in your family of origin impacts your attachment style, right? Attachment style, which we've talked about, and was one of our episodes with Alison Halquest. She talks at length about how your attachment style puts a kind of a template upon you around how you respond to the good, the bad, and the ugly the rest of your life. Yeah. So I think what I ultimately want the listeners to take away from this conversation today is, if you haven't done any work on yourself around your relationship to receiving, that would be a great place for you to look, because unconsciously you might stop yourself from receiving in your trading. Now, obviously it's going to show up in other ways in your life, but because we have a tendency to talk about trading ups and downs, we're putting a focus there, people. But if you look at your day-to-day life and you notice that you never receive compliments and that you have a tendency to dismiss or downplay your wins, it's going to show up in your trading in a costly way, because you need to be able to receive when you are doing the work.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think about this as well as like the idea of like getting what you deserve. And I think a lot of times we conflate that idea like with the idea of like hard work, and then what shows like what comes out of that. So yeah, I wonder what you think about that. Like when you receive, like how much like does your like perception of the work you put in, like what does that, I don't know.
That's touched upon by Celeste Headley in her book, Do Nothing, that we currently have had a culture for, since the Industrial Revolution, constantly teaching us that effort equals value. And I also believe that can be, excuse my French, a bit of a mind fuck. And it makes and forces people to be brainwashed into believing that they only have a right to receive if they earn it. Mm-hmm. And this is very tricky, because I'm talking kind of like very macro spiritual concepts here. On one hand, I'm sensitive to the fact that there are new traders potentially listening to us. I'm not pretending like you can become a baller overnight by, watching the movie The Secret. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
However, there is some kind of if you believe, and I'm not anti the concepts of the law of attraction either. I believe in them. I think the Secret left a lot out, but there's kind of two extremes today, it seems to me, that I can just think good things and everything's going to fall into my lap, or I have to really work hard, and that's the only way to ever have things come to me. Mm. And I think both of them both of those perspectives are two sides of the same coin, believe it or not.
Interesting.
They are not the place of neutrality. And, I'm just, even for myself, I absolutely grew up believing that hard work, is what you had to do to achieve certain money or success or so on and so forth. And the more and more I dive deeper into my own spiritual practices and have been very fortunate to work with some really gifted spiritual teachers, the more I realize that is just a conditioning from the culture. Yeah. And that Landmark Forum and Landmark Education really taught me that we are storytellers. We're telling ourselves stories all the time. And if we really believe our stories, we are ultimately going to manifest those stories, because it's what we're swimming in all the time.
Yeah. It's interesting. So my wife and I were actually having a conversation that kind of went down this road last night. She had been with a friend who is very spiritual, very religious. I was talking about like, it's so nice to like have such a strong belief. And sometimes I'm jealous of how strong hers is in trusting like that God has this plan for her. And then I was just thinking, as you were speaking, I was like, I think of all the like, so many like athletes who just like are like, I trust in God, and they like, he's really what's brought me here. And sometimes I wonder if that in a lot of ways helps, especially compared to people who are agnostic or atheist, because they think that like the universe or God or whatever it is doesn't have their back, and so it's just them against the world. And that seems really that's a lot to overcome. It's interesting.
It's a great question and inquiry, because I do wonder, if that it gives you an edge. And even I think part of my exposure to Joseph Campbell and his speaking about mythology and his own spiritual practices, like there's a great quote, I don't know if I'll remember it now, where he says, he something about faith. He has this great quote about faith. And he said, I guess he was talking about, he was at the New York Athletic Club, which is in New York City. My dad belongs to the New York Athletic Club, so it's a beautiful club. It used to be men only. And this was years ago, when Campbell was there. And it was, they were in the pool, and he was swimming, and a priest, you're naked. You were swimming naked then back in the day. This is probably before it was, certainly was just a men only sports club. And so, the priest didn't have his collar on, so to speak, and so there was a conversation about faith. And what Campbell ultimately was trying to say was that, I don't faith for him. It was like, I don't even need faith because I have experience.
Oh yeah. I think the quote is pretty similar to that. I think it's just like, I don't have faith, I have experience, something along those lines. Yeah.
And so I remembered hearing that, thinking, wow, and my own journey, I have experiences. So my experiences are what inform the faith or the belief or the universe has my back. But I do think for the people that don't have that experience, perhaps, or encounter, then perhaps for some of them it could be, challenging, because you feel, like you said, you're on your own.
Interesting. That's an interesting like perspective shift that you can try, listener. Just like think about some of the things in your life that have seemed the way that like serendipitous or in whatever way, and it's like, what if that is an experience, as opposed to like you need to have this blind faith in the universe, or this blind faith in God, or whatever that you think might be a little out there. Like, what if it's maybe those chance meetings of somebody who then you met somebody else because of, and then they, and it just snowballs, and here you are. This is you. Like, this is where you are now, and that's what's brought. It's so many little coincidences that have brought you to this point.
So many little coincidences. Do you remember that movie Emily? Did you ever see Emily? it was a French film, and it was just it kind of featured some serendipity and happenstance. I think Happenstance also, that's another French film where it was just one. It opened. I think Happenstance opens with a butterfly batting its wings over the Pacific, and then the kaleidoscope of things that come all the way over to another country.
Yeah.
Because of that. And it's just how we are all also interconnected. Mm-hmm. And it's just pay attention is what's we're going down a rabbit hole in this conversation perhaps, but
that's okay.
What are we advocating? We're advocating be conscious of what your stories are.
Yeah.
If you can't receive compliments, how can you receive success in the market? How can you receive from your trading account? If you are coming from a place of only hard work creates success, then perhaps there's opportunities where there isn't hard work involved that you say no to because you think you only hard workers get to have money, and that's Napoleon Hill's book too, Think and Grow Rich. What's the other one? That's the Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, I think it's called. All of these books, and also there's Lynn Grabhorn, her book, Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. That was such a trip for me when I first read that. I read that like 25 years ago, way before The Secret came out, and I was like, oh my God, who can I talk to about this? This is such out there stuff. But then if you dive even a little bit into quantum mechanics, if you dive even a little bit into Schrodinger's cat, where the concept of even observing a scientific experiment changes the experiment, you could go down lots of rabbit holes. And I recommend it because in them, you get forced out of your complete perspective of what you think is so. And, if you're not getting what you think is so challenged at least once a day, I don't think you're going to grow.
Yeah. That's why I always recommend, people read whatever they're comfortable reading. It's like, okay, now read the opposite, just because it's, you got to be aware of that.
To mix it up. I recently read Jawad Mian's book, who is somebody I'm a huge fan of right now, plan to be forever, probably. He's just done, he's an investment advisor around macroeconomics, just a genius of a man, very eclectic journey to finance, which I really appealed to me because I feel like I have an eclectic path into finance myself. But one of the things he talked about in his book, Stray Reflections, which I have on my Instagram page, so I'm going to hold it up here. This is his book, Stray Reflections, highly, highly recommended, people. He goes down so many rabbit holes, and there's this one part where he has the most diplomatic way talking about astrology. Like he mentions astrology in such an incredibly intellectual, educated perspective. And he says something to the effect of like, I'm no expert on its accuracy and this, and this. And he just has respect for so many schools of thought, even ones that I think he maybe isn't necessarily a fan of or a believer of. But his ability to sit in neutrality about all of these perspectives is inspiring.
Yeah. He's also a good follow on Twitter. If you I feel like everyone has Twitter nowadays, so just follow him. He's really interesting, and he's got a lot of poignant little quips that he puts out there. And
correct. Very well read man. He's read a lot of books, and honestly, there were so many books that he mentioned that he read, that I have read, that it was, I wrote him kind of a gushing email because I was like, I haven't met anybody in finance who's read the books, these spiritual books that I've read. And to have a comrade that has read these books and has searched through these questions, it's inspiring. So it was just, I don't know, I felt a little less alone in the universe.
I was going to say, are you guys going to start a book club?
I don't know about that. I joined his Slack channel, which has been fascinating. Very smart people in the room. But I don't know if we're going to start a book club. But the first question, when you introduce yourself to the community, the question he asked was, what's your favorite book? They wanted to know, and it was hard for me to do this, but this is a good example of me trying to practice what I preach. I said, even though at the risk of sounding self-absorbed, my favorite book is my book, Transforming Wall Street, because I worked so hard on it. It asks so much of me, and I love it, and I'm so proud of it. I said, so, I really hope that you guys don't think I'm obnoxious, because I hope I'm not, but I really love my book. And, luckily they were very supportive in their response back. But
well, that's a really open-ended question, right? Like, what's your favorite book? It wasn't what's your favorite book you've ever read.
That's true. That's true. Exactly. That's why I had to say mine.
Yeah, I think that's a great response. How could it not be your favorite book?
Exactly. I gave 5 years of my life to it. Got a lot of gray hairs because of it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But, it was an opportunity, and I have a lot of favorite books. So I could have said, hey, here's about 17 of my favorite books. But then I really thought, because, one of the things we talked about too before this podcast is that in coaching, so many times your clients are wrestling with the very things you are wrestling with. And here I am, on Twitter suggesting to this gentleman he take credit that at that moment when I was on the group Slack channel of Jawad's, Straight Reflections, I thought, here's an opportunity for me to receive myself, a compliment from myself that this is my favorite book. And, there was that part of me like, ooh, am I going to look like I'm too full of myself? But then I thought, if somebody makes that presumption about me, oh, well.
Oh, well, that's a great, what's the problem with that? That's not your problem.
Like they can do that. That's the place they come from. And that's their choice to kind of write me off. She's so full of herself. Look at her. She names her own book. She's just trying to, sell it to us or whatever they could have thought. Right. But I think for me, like I have to learn how to be with that too. Even Ricky Analog came into my Instagram live yesterday again, which was so great. It's so much fun to have him. And you know what Ricky's really good at doing? Telling everybody when we're in there to get on Twitter and tell everybody to come over. And I always forget to do that, Lucas. And every time I'm with him, he's like, Kim, you got to crack the whip. Let's get the people in. And I'm like, you're a much better marketer than I am, Ricky. I have to remember to do that too. Like even in I rarely remember, and I'm going to do it now. Everybody go to my website, thewallstreetcoach.com, sign up for information because we have so many exciting things coming out. Please do that. And if you like what you're hearing here, we're going to ask you to please go into iTunes and give us a review because that really helps a lot. And please give us a comment because YouTube just doesn't give you any priority if you don't give comments. And we want to know what you want us to talk about so we can satisfy your requests. Yeah. So there, I just did a little plug.
Yeah, that was great. So good everyone keep the podcast going, but go to YouTube and ask us, say what you want to hear from us because
exactly
we'll make it happen.
Or just curse us out. It doesn't matter. The algorithm will be happy you're commenting. No, I'm just kidding.
But yes, we would love to receive a comment. Mm-hmm. We would love to receive you to sign up for our newsletter.
Yes.
Because we're putting out a lot of stuff and
for sure.
Some exciting things coming.
For sure. And also who you would like to see on this podcast. Like, are there, we were very fortunate to have some really great people right out of the gate, including Matthew McConaughey. And if you haven't seen that episode, you definitely want to listen to it. But, let us know, do you want us to talk to traders? Are there traders you can specifically mention to us? We'll track them down and try to get them on. Is it around the emotional intelligence? Do you want to hear more about attachment style? And, even trauma, right? I've been advocating a lot on social media. Everybody check out Gabor Mate's book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, to understand how you tick. And he also has a documentary coming out that's only available for a short time called The Wisdom of Trauma. And that will only be out, I think, July 28th through August 1st. I'm not even sure when you're going to see this, but hopefully that movie will be released eventually. But right now they have a promotion. But he came on Instagram Live the first time just the other day. And he has a slew of talks on YouTube as well, that if you want to know who Gabor Mate is and his philosophy. And he's also been on Tim Ferriss. For any trader here, you guys probably are into Tim Ferriss. His conversation with Tim Ferriss a couple of years ago, I think actually helped Tim come forward about his own childhood sexual abuse that he had endured, because the Gabor Mate interview that Tim did preceded that probably by 6 or 9 months. And no doubt, listening to Tim's harrowing journey and how the pandemic is why he just wanted to make sure that his story got told and before he died, but he was afraid to really come forward with it because it was such a challenging story and he didn't want to look like a victim and all of that. So he recorded it during the pandemic. Why? Because he was afraid, God, maybe, we're all mortal. The pandemic forces you to look on your mortality a bit. And he said, I'm going to record this podcast and not release it unless I die. And then after he did the podcast, he realized, I can't do that. I have to be with the dragon and let it be released now. But if you haven't ever listened to Tim Ferriss, conversation about his own journey, you got to listen to it. It's quite something. And the Gabor Mate interview he did was, months before that. And what you hear from Gabor Mate talking about trauma, even for Tim, like he does a little mini session for Tim in the interview, it's profound. And you can see something's happening for Tim. Something is being bumped into, as we all have. We all have trauma of different, levels. And I think it's important for people to understand that is going to be impacting your trading people. You may want it to not, but it's impacting you. Yeah,
I think it impacts every part of your life, right? Like we're all just a walking fleshy thing of our experiences. So
that's it. That's exactly right. So the more aware you become, the better chance you have at being able to manage it and be able to navigate it. So this is not about like, great, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole and then what, Kim? No, what you're going to see is you're going to have the opportunity then to notice, wow, even one guy I remember, it was in a speed coaching, I think of Instagram. He said he was getting very angry every time he, had an issue in his trading. And I said, well, let me ask you, outside of trading, how do you handle it when somebody cuts you off, when you don't make the green light? He's like, yeah, I'm pretty angry all the time. And I was like, it's not like it's just your trading. Look the rest of your life. Yeah. Look the rest of your life. The pattern, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be good to know how that machine, the vehicle, is working under the hood? Like, you don't ever not look under the hood of your car. You got to put in oil, washer, wiper, fluid, whatever. How often do you open up your own hood and look inside?
Yeah, examine it a little bit.
Right? Yeah. Find out if the cable is rusty. Yeah. Find out if the battery is close to dead or corroded. Like, what are you going to do? Just let yourself, go to hell in a handbasket?
Yeah, which is exactly, what we were talking about at the beginning. It's like, if you can't receive a compliment, how easy can you receive money? How easy can you receive other things in life? Because we usually don't have the ability to compartmentalize in certain areas.
Correct.
Really. So, yeah.
Correct. And if we think it's only going to be, just look at your beliefs, write them down. What are the ones you are so committed to? What are the ones that you feel? The problem is beliefs sometimes collapse with who we think we are. And that is when it gets dangerous, because you are so much, beliefs are simply thoughts, and thoughts are not your identity. You are not your thoughts. You have thoughts, but a lot of time, even the way people speak, and even the way I speak, when somebody says like, how are you doing? I'm frustrated. No, I'm feeling frustrated. I am not frustration. I'm not anger.
Yeah.
I am feeling angry. I am feeling frustrated. I am feeling apathetic. But to self-identify with those feelings, cuts you off.
It's interesting. This is, I mean, I bring it up all the time, I feel like, but Brene Brown, when she talks about, in her book, Daring Greatly, with, one of her kids, it's like, she did something, like, I don't know, spilled something. And Brene says that was bad. That was bad. And she said, I'm not bad. I did a bad thing, or something like that.
Wow. Because, that's like, fabulous.
Yeah. Cause that's just how she speaks all the time, because it's
all the time.
Yeah.
Totally. That's awesome. That's really great. It's really great. I think it takes practice, and a lot of times there's a quote I know I have somewhere in my book from a little book, like a decorative book. And it said, you're not your car, you're not your bank account, you're not your education, you're not your body, you're not your political party, you're not your favorite rock band. You're none of these things. You're so much more than that. And even Matthew McConaughey has a part in his book, Green Lights, where he talks about he was in the Amazon. He was not really kind of settling into the place. And this scene where he takes off his, claddagh ring that his dad had, which is the symbol of his Irish heritage. He takes off his American flag hat as an American. He takes off a necklace he got from a shaman or something. Like he just strips down and he says, I had to kind of like get back to who I am without these labels.
Yeah.
And I think labels and beliefs, they're kind of in that same ballpark, identify your beliefs, identify the labels that are so important to you. And just get curious about them. Don't make yourself wrong. Just get curious about whether those beliefs, are they all serving you?
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe question like where they came from, where they originate, why I did that. And then you can pull on that string for a while and see where.
Exactly. Because it's the way it was always done. And that's the way my mother did it or my father did it. And it may be generational, but do you want to just be living from a default setting? Or do you want to be living with intentionality and to let go of those things that are costly or not as frictionless? Yeah. Maybe there's more friction in your trading than there needs to be.
Yeah.
And maybe just being able to receive a compliment is the door to that opening up.
Yeah. And this, it goes back to the idea of like working too hard sometimes. I think sometimes I feel like I said this once on one of the Instagram lives that I filled in for you, but it's like, sometimes I think we make trading harder than it is, just because we want to do more.
Earn it. You want to earn it.
Exactly. Right. And it's, and not that it's easy. And by no means am I saying that trading's easy. It's very difficult. And the weird part about it is like, it's unlike anything else. You have to put in a ton of time and a ton of work where you're not making anything. And then it compounds and you can start making money really fast. And that can feel really weird. That can feel really uncomfortable. So
that's it.
Yeah. You have to be aware of that so that you can receive that.
Yeah. For sure. And speaking of which, if you guys don't know, I do an Instagram live 4:30 Eastern after market closes on Tuesdays and Thursday. When I can't make it, Lucas substitutes for me, wonderfully so. But please come and check us out there. We've been very fortunate to have some amazing speed coaching with people who volunteer in the room. But we also have, guests that come in all the time that are full of wisdom. Ricky Analog, who's an amazing trader. He's, what is his Twitter handle? Is it just Ricky Analog? I think it is on Instagram.
Analog,
and he dropped some pearls yesterday. So sometimes we have somebody unexpected in the room, and sometimes we just have other traders who are trying to work through their day, and I'll do a little riff on a topic that I think I'm seeing among traders, and then we'll do some speed coaching. So feel free to come into that on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they sit on my Instagram page at Kim Ann Curtin if you miss them, so you can watch them on a later date.
Yeah,
so
definitely check them out.
Wrap it up.
Because it's but this is just me confirming that. Definitely check them out, because a lot of times you'll see, like, even if you don't want to get coached, or you can definitely just ask questions during the feed. And and you just be there, because if other people are asking questions, it very well could be something that you're bumping into as well. I've seen that time and time again.
Absolutely true. That's very true. And it's also a very supportive group of people. Like everybody has each other's back there. Very, very encouraging to one another. And a lot of treating buddies have formulated from that group, where I've also always been an advocate that you have a friend who's in the thick of it with you, perhaps at the same level as you, so you can kind of hold each other accountable, have each other's back, and not feel so alone and isolated. And, you know, some of the people that have paired up in that group, you know, they have some really great stories about how productive that's been for them both. So it's a good group. I think you guys will dig it for sure. Cool. All right. So we'll wrap it up here. We'll put, you know, any references. We have a tendency to wax on and go down a few rabbit holes. We'll put those. I'll try to put the 25 books that we mentioned. Exactly. Yeah, no, maybe just the ones we talked about at depth. Exactly. We have a tendency to talk about a lot of references, but you guys can Google. Lucas spent hours trying to get all the links to everything. Just Google it. And we hope to see you. We're going to have a guest, I think, for our next episode. So again, let us know what you think of these. Let us know what you want to see here. And tell your friends, if you like this podcast, tell your friends about it, tell your other trading comrades, and let's build our group up so we can be more supportive and, you know, help one another out. So until we meet again, I'll say aloha for now. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Lucas. And we'll see you next time on the Wall Street Coach Podcast.
This has been the Wall Street Coach Podcast with Kim Ann Curtin. You can find out more about her and her team online at thewallstreetcoach.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes. Thank you for listening.